Hello.
I hadn't seen Aunt Rachel in over a year, not since my mom's birthday the summer before. Life got busy, college, work, trying to figure out who I was outside the small town I grew up in. But when my mom asked if I could help her sister move some old furniture into storage while she was out of town, I agreed without thinking twice. It was early June when I pulled up to Aunt Rachel's house. The sun was still warming up the sidewalks, and her lawn looked perfectly trimmed, just like I remembered. Nothing really changed about the house. The white siding, the rocking chair on the front porch, the hanging plant she always forgot to water. But somehow, it all felt different this time. Maybe because I wasn't a kid anymore. Maybe because I saw things now I didn't see before. She opened the door before I even knocked. "There's my strong nephew," she smiled, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "God, you got tall." Her hair was pulled into a loose bun, and she wore a simple t-shirt and yoga pants, the kind of casual that only looks effortless when you're completely at ease in your own home. "Hey, Aunt Rachel," I smiled, stepping inside and letting the familiar scent of vanilla and something floral hit me like a memory. "You didn't have to clean up for me." She laughed and gave me a quick hug. "Trust me, this is as clean as it gets these days. Come on, the boxes are in the garage." I followed her through the house, noting how much it felt the same, and yet so hers. Cozy. Lived in. There were little touches that I hadn't paid attention to before. Books stacked neatly under the coffee table, candles on the windowsill, a half-full wine glass on the kitchen counter. We spent the next hour moving boxes. Old holiday decorations, books, some furniture she wanted to take to the basement. It was hot and dusty work, but neither of us complained. We made small talk about school, about her job at the local library, about how my mom was always trying to play matchmaker. "You know," she said as we carried a heavy trunk out of the garage, "when you were 10, you used to sit on this and pretend it was a spaceship." I laughed. "I probably thought I was going to the moon." "You did. You even made me call you Captain." The moment hung in the air a second too long. She looked at me, not in a nostalgic way, but like she was seeing me now in the present. Not a kid. Not Captain. Just me. By the time we finished, it was well past noon and the sun had climbed high enough to start baking the driveway. Sweat clung to my shirt. Aunt Rachel stood with her hands on her hips, breathing a little heavier, her cheeks flushed. "Okay," she said, brushing her hair out of her face. "Let's take a break." The way she said it, calm, deliberate, but soft, made something flutter in my chest. "Sounds good," I replied, trying not to read too much into it. She led me back inside, poured us both iced tea, and nodded toward the couch in the living room. "Sit. I'll grab some fruit or something." I sat, watching her disappear into the kitchen. The way she moved, confident but unhurried, made me feel like I was seeing her in a new light. She wasn't just my aunt anymore. She was a woman, a beautiful, grounded, quietly radiant woman. And for the first time in my life, I realized that maybe this visit wasn't going to be as simple as helping with a few boxes. Aunt Rachel returned from the kitchen carrying a plate with apple slices and a bowl of almonds, like she always did when I visited as a kid. She set them on the coffee table in front of me, then lowered herself onto the couch beside me, still holding her iced tea. Her breath had slowed, but her cheeks still carried that warm flush from the garage. "You've grown into a good man, Jason," she said suddenly, breaking the silence as she picked up an apple slice. "Your mom says you've been helping out at school and even tutoring. That's impressive." I shrugged, a little thrown by the compliment. "Just trying to stay busy, keep my GPA up." She smiled and nudged my shoulder lightly with her elbow. Don't be so modest. You've got this quiet strength now. I can see it. Her words lingered. I wasn't used to being seen like that, at least not by her. The room felt warmer than before, but not just from the sun outside. Something had shifted subtly but unmistakably. The silence between us wasn't awkward, it was charged, comfortable, but with a hum of something new under the surface. We ate a little, talked a little more, mostly about nothing, but every now and then I caught her eyes lingering a moment longer. I tried not to stare, but there was something about the way the sunlight danced across her features, softening the fine lines near her eyes, warming the tones in her hair, making the delicate gold chain around her neck glint. She leaned back against the couch and sighed deeply. You ever just feel like time's running too fast? She asked. One minute you're chasing your little nephew around the yard. The next he's a man, moving boxes like a pro. I looked at her, unsure how to answer. Yeah, I get it. Sometimes I feel like I blinked and I'm suddenly an adult. Exactly, she said, turning her head to meet my gaze. Her eyes were thoughtful, but there was something else behind them. Curiosity, maybe even hunger. It's strange, isn't it? How people change. How we don't always see it. Until we do. My chest tightened. The air between us seemed to thicken. She looked away first, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. I'm going to take a quick shower, she said quietly, rising from the couch. You can stay here. Relax. Sure, I replied, not trusting my voice. I heard her footsteps retreating down the hall, followed by the soft click of the bathroom door. Then the faint rush of water. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, trying to calm my racing thoughts. This wasn't how I expected today to go. When she returned, her hair was wet and pulled into a loose braid. She wore a long beige robe, the kind you only wear at home when you're comfortable with someone. She moved with the same easy grace, but now I noticed every detail. The way the robe tied at her waist, how it swayed as she walked. She settled back on the couch, closer this time, and gave me a half smile. Thanks again for helping me today, Jason. I really do appreciate it. It was nothing, I said. I was glad to help. No, she said more firmly. You were exactly what I needed. That line didn't feel casual, and I couldn't ignore the way she was looking at me now. Not just warm or grateful, but searching, almost waiting. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I wasn't sure if I should speak or wait for her to say more. The pause stretched between us, heavy with everything unspoken. And then, in the quiet, she said it. I needed a break, not just from the boxes, from everything. I looked at her, really looked at her, and she didn't look away. She didn't need to explain further. For a few moments, we sat in silence, the air between us thick with tension neither of us dared acknowledge aloud. Aunt Rachel sipped her iced tea slowly, her fingers lightly tapping the side of the glass as if trying to ground herself. Her gaze flicked from the TV, which was still quietly playing an old sitcom, back to me. I wasn't watching the show either. I shifted slightly on the couch, pretending to stretch my arm behind my head, but really it was just to release some of the nervous energy building up inside me. Her presence, so familiar for so many years, now felt charged in a way that was completely unfamiliar. You know, she said after a moment, her voice quieter, more measured. Sometimes it's easier to be around someone who doesn't expect anything from you. I turned to her, unsure where this was going. You grow up, people start seeing you a certain way, she continued. Wife and neighbor. Hostess, everyone expects something. But sometimes, she paused, her eyes locking with mine. You just want to be seen for who you are. No labels. I nodded slowly. I think I get that. It's like people stop noticing the real you. They just see the version that fits their story. She smiled gently. Exactly. The words hung there for a while, lingering between us, fragile and exposed. Then she shifted a little closer. Her robe brushed lightly against my arm. It was subtle, almost accidental, but I could feel her warmth, the softness of the fabric, the tension in her posture. You've really changed, she said, looking at me again. I remember when you were just a scrawny teenager who used to raid my fridge and leave his sneakers by the door. I laughed, shaking my head. Yeah, I was pretty annoying, huh? She chuckled. A little, but always sweet, kind. And now, her voice trailed off, but her eyes didn't. I felt myself blushing, but I couldn't look away. It wasn't like I hadn't noticed her before. Even in high school, I was vaguely aware that my aunt was attractive, but she was family, off limits, untouchable. But now, sitting this close, talking like this, it felt like the lines that once existed were slowly fading. She reached over to adjust the pillow behind her and left her hand resting on the couch cushion between us. Her fingers were only inches from mine. Jason, she said slowly, her tone different now, softer, more personal. Can I ask you something? Of course. When you look at me now, do you still see me as just your aunt? My mouth went dry. My heart thudded once, hard. The room felt too small. I met her eyes and she didn't flinch. There was no judgment there, just vulnerability. I swallowed. No, I said honestly. Not just. She nodded, her lips pressing together in a knowing way. That's what I thought. She didn't say anything more. She didn't need to. Instead, she leaned back again, her shoulder brushing mine. Her hand was still resting close to mine on the cushion, and this time she didn't move it. The air was electric. I could hear every creak of the ceiling fan above us, every car that passed by the window. The whole world had gone quiet, narrowing down to this moment. I've missed having someone around, she said quietly, almost to herself. Someone who listens. I'm here, I replied, just as softly. And then, in a move so natural it didn't even register at first, her fingers gently curled around mine. Neither of us moved. Neither of us pulled away. The moment was fragile, intimate, unspoken, but everything had changed. The moment her fingers curled around mine, something shifted, not just in the room, but deep inside me. We sat there, hands loosely intertwined, neither of us speaking. The sound of the television faded into the background. The only thing that mattered was the shared silence and what it meant. Aunt Rachel didn't say anything right away. She just stared down at our hands, then slowly turned her gaze to me. You don't have to stay, Jason, she said, her voice low and calm. I won't be offended if you want to pretend this never happened. But I didn't move. I squeezed her hand gently and shook my head. I don't want to pretend, I said, but I also don't want to do something we'll regret. She gave a soft smile, almost sad. You're a good man. There was a long pause between us. Let's just sit here, she said, just for a little while. And so we did. The rest of the evening unfolded slowly, like a dream you're not sure you're awake in. We didn't go back to the garage. We didn't finish moving the boxes. The work was forgotten. We made dinner together in the kitchen. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread, and talked like old friends catching up. She told me stories I'd never heard before, about her early 20s, about her dreams before she married my uncle, about how life didn't always go the way she imagined. At one point, she stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. "You're the first person in a long time who actually listens to me," she said. "I'm glad I came by today," I replied. Later, we ended up back in the living room, this time sitting across from each other. There was a tenderness in her eyes that wasn't there before. She looked younger somehow, lighter. "I needed this," she said quietly. I nodded. "Me too." Eventually, she stood and stretched. "I'm going to take a shower," she said casually, as if the moment between us hadn't shifted something fundamental. I stood too. "I should probably head out." She walked over and stood in front of me, not too close, but close enough that I could smell the faint citrus of her shampoo. "Drive safe," she said, and then leaned in, slowly, deliberately, and kissed me on the cheek. Her lips lingered there just a second longer than necessary. I stood frozen, unsure what to say. "Good night, Jason," she said, then turned and disappeared down the hall. I left the house in a daze. The night air hit me as I stepped outside, grounding me. I walked to my car slowly, still trying to make sense of everything. My Aunt Rachel had never been just an aunt. She was human, complex, full of needs and feelings she'd buried beneath years of playing roles for others. And maybe today was just a glimpse of the version of herself she used to be or wanted to be again. As I started the engine and backed out of the driveway, I knew one thing for sure. Nothing between us would ever be the same again.
Bye bye.